I think women need to be a little bit louder in how the world is being shaped. Your voice is important because you are part of this world.
Sahar Danesh. This is STEMazing.
So I was always very good at maths, but I had this one teacher who taught physics, and she was young, and she just made physics very accessible. Suddenly I understood what we meant by physics, the actions and reactions of how things work. And suddenly it just clicked for me. I could see, well, of course, if I put weight on this side, that's going to shift that side. If you push this way, that's going to go that way. And it suddenly just really clicked. And I am very grateful that it did, because to this day, I feel that I see the world with that vision of physics in my mind. And that's really the fundamental of engineering. But I guess at the time, I didn't really know I wanted to be an engineer. I didn't know what that looked like, but I also didn't know what I wanted to do. And that was where I was sort of after school, that I wasn't really sure. And I'm one of those lucky ones that had a parent who was an engineer. My dad was an engineer, and he sort of said, give engineering a try. And not knowing what else I wanted to do, and also being good at physics and maths, I went into engineering, and sort of by accident, really. I think I struggled a little bit at university. I think it was a bit academic. It was a bit theoretical. And we didn't have any female teachers. We had no female professors. There was, about 10 of us girls to about 60, 70 boys. And the girls started dropping off after a while. A few of them dropped out midway. And it's just, I struggled a little bit the first few years. But what happened was I got into the problem-solving part of engineering. And through actual practical things, I started to get that sort of click of physics again. It's like, now I understand what we're trying to do. Now I understand, the purpose of this learning is to solve these problems. I really enjoyed that again, and that gave me sort of a sort of excitement towards the topic. And then I started to find my way, and I started to come up with projects, and I had a really interesting thesis that was about, protecting people in sort of extreme heat and extreme light, and building things that were very sustainable but also practical. And I found the problem-solving element the best part, and that's really what made me into an engineer. And then after university, I did what everyone does and goes and works in an engineering consultancy. And that's when I really started to come into my own as an engineer, because you are real world problem solving. And actually it was fine to be one of the very few female engineers. The guys were really supportive. And I was one of those engineers that was on site. I had my hard hat. I had my boots that were too big, and I had my visibility vest that was just huge, but I was there, I was on site, and problem solving, which was brilliant. You would design something, you would understand what you're trying to achieve, and you would start creating solutions based around the requirements. And sometimes things wouldn't always go to plan, so you had to be thinking on your feet. So the problem-solving element of it was fantastic. I really enjoyed that. And I built some really brilliant things. I was a structural engineer, so built schools and colleges. I built a theatre. I had dinner at one of the buildings that I built, and I saw play in the theatre that I built. And it was fantastic, a brilliant experience. And then I think I started to want a bit more. And I started to sort of really dig down into, why are we building this here? And why are we not doing it that way? And why are we following these rules and not other rules? And at the time, I felt like I was a bit sort of too far down in the process of the change that I wanted to do. And you know, those exciting opportunities of problem solving were already sort of further up. I didn't really understand at the time what the solution was or what I would be doing. So I sort of leaped a little bit at this point and upskilled into a completely different area that engineers are not very familiar with. I went into and did a writing degree. People at the time thought I'd lost my mind. I'm like, you're an engineer, you've got a great career, what are you doing? Why are you... But it was an area that I was just not great at. And engineers are not taught communication very well. We don't have those lessons. We don't have that understanding of how to communicate about what you're doing. And I felt that weakness in me. And so learning this whole other skill was very invigorating. I felt another part of my brain being switched on. And I did a degree in that. And I think after I finished the degree, I'm like, now what do I do? And it was by pure luck that I saw a job advertised at the Royal Academy of Engineering. And it was around what I then learned was policy and being a policy advisor. And I hadn't really understood what that world is. What is the world of policy? And it's really about, you know, bringing information together and talking to experts and then coming up with the best solutions that with clear guidelines and recommendations. And that suddenly I was like, this is it. This is the thing that I wanted to do. And finding that sort of Venn diagram of engineering and communication and, you know, looking at societal requirements, I felt so lucky that I'd found this opportunity. And it was a great experience. And it got me into the world of policy advising, working very closely with government, but still working closely with experts. And I think that really was the part that I really still was glad that I was an engineer, because speaking to experts was exciting and still had that technical understanding in my world still. I think a lot of the time I didn't even realize that I was the only woman in many rooms that I went into, especially in an engineering world where you are sort of surrounded by the guys that are on site and the operators and the people that are building things. They were never women, and I was the only one. And I had a good community of friends at this time when I was working in industry who were in similar situations, and it was really good to engage with those. I think neither of us really saw that many women on our day-to-day basis. I know that in my consultancy there wasn't any. The only women were office administrators, and everyone else, it was just men. And I think on occasion I would bump into a female engineer and be in awe about how brilliant they were and make really good friends with them. So enhancing that community of female engineers through personal connections was incredibly valuable, because there was very few of us out there. I don't know what it's like at the moment within those technical, active engineering sort of platforms, but I think in the world that I am now, the experts are still mostly men, but the people around them that enable the infrastructure for engineering to grow are mostly women. And I really admire that. So looking at places like the Royal Academy of Engineering, where there's strong female leadership And also in the IET, the Institution of Engineering and Technology, my engineering institution, again, really good female leadership. And also now at BSI, I see good female leadership pushing forward the profession quite well. But the people who are operating are still men. I don't think I ever felt out of place. I think I relished the challenge in a way. You want to be seen and you want to stand out, especially when you're new at your career. And you do get noticed when you are the only woman in the room. I think what I would say is that maybe I probably diminished a little bit of my femininity so that you would fit in a way. And I think that's probably something that I'm seeing now with young women engineers, that they're not doing that as much. And I'm really glad to see it, because I think at the time you would just wear very sort of drab clothing, very sort of male-esque shoes, and just try your best to be one of the guys. And now I can see that young women that are coming forward in the profession are not doing that. And I think those celebrations of women engineers, those glitzy award shows are actually really good, because they enable those women to bring their full selves and represent themselves. I feel very lucky to be able to be in this intersection world at this moment in time, because we're at the boom of technology. I've worked on projects like autonomous vehicles, smart cities, advancements in 5G, but now in the age that we are, the age of AI, I feel very lucky to be in a place that can be in that mediation of what does good look like as we step into this AI world. What are the experts, the technologists, what are they working on? And what do policymakers need to consider when they start shaping the rules and laws that are going to be commonplace for a very long time? And being able to be part of that and help shape that governance system is very exciting. At the end of the day, AI is a technology. It's just a tool. It can be used for good or for bad purposes. How are you going to make sure that your people are safe, your citizens are safe, but at the same time you're not stifling the innovation that is coming? So, for instance, AI is being used in healthcare to detect diseases. But AI is also being used on social media. It's being let loose on the internet. So, how can you ensure that the data it's using and what it's producing doesn't have bias, is not being used for nefarious reasons? It's not being creating deepfakes or trying to persuade or targeting vulnerable people just because it knows that they're vulnerable. Those are the things that really need to be checked. No one person can design that infrastructure of what good should look like. You need a big community of people. You need all the experts, you need all the policymakers, and you need consumer voices, and you need civil society voices, you need philosophers, you need artists. You need to bring them all together so that we together can decide what does good look like for us in this space. This is a very pivotal time for us to be able to do that and shape it so that no one gets left behind. The way that the world is, the imbalance of the world can be exaggerated if we're not careful when technology like this comes through. I think we need to remember that not everyone in the world even has electricity at the moment. So the fact that we are designing a system that's based around not everyone's needs and wants, we have to be super careful that we don't create more divide in our society. I think the best thing I did to build my resilience is to explore different things. I think one of the things that you probably don't know when you're younger is once you're in a route, it's okay to go and see, oh, what's happening there? And, oh, I'm a bit curious to follow that. And the more you do that, the more opportunities open up for you. Because you can then see, oh, actually, I'm really interested in this area. And maybe I'll pursue it. And that really builds your confidence because you will have a bit more drive because you're not, in a way, boxing yourself in with a topic that maybe isn't as close to your heart. For me, I think if I had stayed in my sort of more practical engineering career, I probably would have struggled, to be honest. I would have felt quite boxed in. So I would say that by exploring and finding what I'm doing now, I feel much more confident in what I do. Again, I wouldn't have known about this world had I not entered into it and given it a try. So I would say try different things, and the foundations that you gain as an engineer are so useful for problem solving, but also for the way that you think about things. You look at a system as a whole as an engineer. So when you solve a problem, you are actually solving quite a lot of challenges all in one go and finding a solution that works for everyone. And that's a very engineer thing to do, which is incredibly useful in this world. I think women need to probably be a little bit more louder in how the world is being shaped. I sometimes think that we think we can't or we shouldn't. And I think women need to be a little bit more vocal about how things are being developed in this world. And it doesn't mean that you need to go and get an engineering degree to come and comment on the technology that's being built around you. You, at the end of the day, are a consumer as a woman. What is working and what is not working for you is very important. We know so many of the engineers are men, and we see a lot of the technology is being developed by men. And is there a way that we can try and readdress that balance by bringing in women's voices? The voice of a woman in how we shape society's approach to technology is going to be very important to make sure that it works for them. Women had a really fundamental part in innovation. I know the Women's Engineering Society has some really great case studies of the innovations that women brought in, but also the voices of women that were in the household and said, we need guidance on this and we need safety around this. The 3-pin plug. A woman was instrumental in making sure that an electric plug is safe. It's by saying and raising our requirements in these forums that we can help shape the world. Don't feel that your voice is not important because there's experts. Your voice is important because you are part of this world, and the world needs to be able to accommodate your requirements. And I think that is important to note.
For more information about the guest featured in this episode, head to stamazing.co.uk/podcast. And to join the inspiration and inclusion revolution, just visit stamazing.co.uk. With thanks to Alexandra Knight and our production team at What Goes On Media. This is Stamazing.